The Age of Spiritual Machines was a book that I found really interesting while I was reading it because it explores the connections and parallels between the human evolution and the ever ongoing evolution of technology and machines. I really enjoyed many parts of this book, and I think that the book was even more interesting when I investigated and found out more about the author, Ray Kurzweil. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Because it turns out that the author is a really accomplished man. At the beginning of the book, we can see that it mentions that he has won many awards throughout his career, such like the Dickinson Prize in the year 1994, and has been recipient of 9 honorary doctorates and honors from 2 US presidents. However, upon further investigation about him, because I was really interested to find out more about his life, I found that he was actually an inventor. And for me, it makes perfect sense that he has this profession and he wrote this book because at the very heart of the career, at the very core of being an inventor, I think that part of it is really understanding evolution and the timing of when people are gonna need certain new things. And so I think that's what I found most interesting about him, that his career was really what got him thinking about what is the evolution of the relationship between humans and machines and technology gonna be like. So I don't know, that really got my attention. So now getting a little bit into the book, we can see that the book itself is divided into 3 big parts, and each part is developed throughout many chapters. So going into the part 1 of the book, this one is named Probing the Past, and it focused mainly on explaining theories, talking about the creation of the universe and how evolution came to be. This part, I would say, at least for me, was the most challenging one to read because it was very technical, in my opinion. But I feel like it was really important because it laid down like a base for us to understand the following ideas that the author was gonna propose about our relationship with machines and how this will be changing in the future. I think that what I found most interesting in this part was the law of time and chaos, which basically explains that the more chaos there is in a system, the bigger the times will be between one major event and another. Basically, when there's a lot of chaos in a system, a lot of time will pass between important events. And I think that the reason this caught my eye is because this is applicable in pretty much everything we do as humans. After we do something for the first time, this serves as a base to just keep doing better with this knowledge we already have, not starting from scratch each time we want to do something new. And I feel like that's what gave the opening for technological advances to happen so rapidly nowadays. That's why we can have a lot of technology developing and growing so fast, because we already have a lot of past experiences and past inventions that help us just keep bettering things instead of trying to think from zero what new things we can do to improve our lives. Also, a concept that he mentioned that really caught my eye was computation, which is the ability to store information and use it to solve problems. This basically, he explains, the author, that is what gave base to evolution to happen. And I found this really interesting because this is something that machines definitely do nowadays. They, depending on an algorithm that programmers can make in certain machines, they can store information and keep bettering themselves. So this is what he started proposing as something that machines are gonna do and why they're gonna keep evolving even faster than humans are capable of at the moment. With this in mind, we get to the second part of the book, which is called Preparing the Present, in which the author mainly talks about some predictions he has for the 21st century and how he compares these predictions on technology with how technology currently works by the time he wrote this book, which was the year 1999. Now, something that I found really interesting were the chapters 6 and 7, which talk about the evolution of minds and bodies respectively. Pretty much the author believes that computers will equal the computing speed of the human brain by the year 2020. And he believes that it is possible to create conscious machines because he says that by the 21st century, we're going to reach a point in which we could transfer parts of our minds into new mediums, into technological mediums to be more specifically. And so we can have some sort of immortality in that sense, in which our mind can be preserved for longer than ever before. Also, he believes that the body and the brain will be evolving together in this way gradually, but he thinks that we are already starting to see this new experimentation with the body, with artificial body parts and things like of this nature. I think that this is really interesting what he proposes, because it is pretty much to live a sense of immortality, to preserve our minds into the future and just have this conscious of us to be passed on into from generation to generation. Especially this is interesting for people who are ill or have terminal diseases, in my opinion, because this can give them an outlet to live a life with a little less suffering and to preserve their minds as long as possible. So I don't think that computers have necessarily got to the same level of computing, as the human mind. But I think that it is not necessarily something impossible. I think that is something that could happen, but just has not happened yet, as the author predicted. Finally, in the third part of the book, which is called To Face the Future, we see that the author makes predictions more in depth about the specific years of 2009, 2019, 2029, and 2099. Now, I think that for the years that have already passed, this being 2009 and 2019, there are some predictions that actually became true. For example, in the year 2009, we can see that he predicted that technology will be smaller and more portable, even going to the length of stating that it's going to be embedded in our clothes and jewelry. This is completely true because we now have smartwatches such as the Apple Watch, which is just something that it's pretty much normalized. It's pretty normal to see someone with this nowadays, and it's pretty much what he predicted. Now, there are other things that I think that didn't happen exactly how he stated, but we can definitely see the similarities with the predictions. For example, he predicted translating phones, which were gonna be phones that translate in real-time conversations from one language to another. This is not necessarily accurate because, as far as I know, we don't have such things, sadly. But we can see, for example, in social media, for example, in Instagram, on the captions, that there's a little button at the bottom of the description that says translate, and we can translate in real life, and so just that in social media, in reading messages, information from one language to another, which in my mind makes a lot of sense because now people, precisely because of technology, we don't talk as much, like actually talk as much with other people. We communicate rather through written form instead of the spoken form. A similar thing happens for the year 2009, in which the author predicted that computers will be largely invisible and we will communicate mainly with other people through virtual reality platforms. Now, I think that it's true that there are a lot of computers that are fairly invisible to us. For example, there are smart light bulbs that you can change through your phone if you turn it on or off, or the brightness and stuff like that. And this is because of a really tiny computer that can give that specific command to the light bulb. And that's just the one example I thought. I'm sure there are many more that we're not even aware of, probably. However, even though we have a virtual reality and it has become pretty popular, especially with the creation of platforms such as the Metaverse, which I will go more into detail about that in a little bit. I don't think that most of our interactions yet are through these platforms. However, I can see how these platforms are still growing and are probably gonna become more and more popular with each passing year. I think that it is also important to mention for this year that the author predicted that we were gonna have relationships with automated personalities, and I think that this is something that we can see already happening with the personal assistants in the form of Alexa and Siri. We have literally in our phone an artificial intelligence that serves as our personal assistant and that we constantly are using in our everyday activities. So I don't think this is necessarily to the length or in the depth that the author thought we were gonna have relationships, but I think this is just the beginning of a relation that is just gonna keep evolving and growing between us and our machines. Now, regarding the year 2029, the author predicted that technology will begin to be embedded into the human brain and we will begin to alter our body through the implementation of neural implants to improve our physical condition, such as vision and memory. I don't know if I believe this will happen as soon as the year 2029, but this sounds really similar to what Elon Musk is trying to make with Neuralink. He's not necessarily trying to improve the human body, but with Neuralink, the idea is that through a chip that is installed into your brain, you can control your technological devices, such as your phone, for example. And I think that is something that still needs a lot more of development. This project started on the year 2016, and still it is not a common practice. It is not necessarily commercialized yet, but I believe that all of these investigations that Elon Musk is making will definitely serve as the base for more implementations to happen, for more new technologies that use this logic behind it to implement things in our brains. This will definitely be more common practice once this project is done, and maybe we will get to that point that the author is proposing, just maybe not by this year, maybe a little bit more into the future. Finally, for the year 2099, the author expresses that he believes that machines and humans will merge completely. It will be the new norm, and this will allow the human race to live more than 100 years. He believes that we are not gonna be able to distinguish who is human and who is a machine, and people who have not merged, to put it that way, with technology are not gonna be able to be an active participant in their community or in society. So after reading this book, I actually did my own research about the topics and predictions that the author made, because I wanted to know how realistic, especially this last one of 2099, how realistic it actually could be. And it surprised me to see that in the book, on this part, the author makes the predictions with a mindset that computational efficiency will double every 12 months. However, it is largely agreed that this will happen every 18 months instead of every 12 months. Now, this makes a huge difference because that means that the author is not necessarily wrong in some predictions, he's just early to predict them. I think this makes perfect sense because in the year 2009, we can see that all of his predictions were fairly accurate. Well, for example, in 2019, some of them are true, some of them are not quite there yet. But I think it is all due because of this. It's not that they won't happen, it's just that they will take a little bit longer than expected to happen. Now, with this in mind, I think that this can be related to things such as the metaverse, for example. Like I said, the author is not wrong. He's just kind of early into making these predictions. And I think that the metaverse is the perfect example, especially with the part of virtual reality. This is the first huge virtual reality platform in which people are encouraged and able to live everyday life and to do normal things and invest, and you can do pretty much anything in the metaverse. And I think this relates a lot with all of the other ideas of the author. The metaverse is the first merging point, I think, like actually merge between our human everyday life and technology. And I think that this is only the beginning of more and more relationships that will develop through technology, and that we're gonna feel as something real and as something, this reality that maybe we would even prefer rather than the real world that surrounds us. So I think this is really interesting because I definitely now have some new ideas of what our future will be like. And I don't know if I'm more excited or scared about the dependency we will have in technology, but it will be really interesting to see where we go from here.